Hey everyone, this is Adam Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Happy Sunday, everybody. I hope you guys are having a good weekend. For today's bonus episode, I have created a special written meditation and reflection on why it is that astrology is able to predict the future. This is one of those topics that I love to think about, not that I pretend to have total certainty about, but I think reflecting on these kinds of questions is something that I'm realizing there's great value in doing on the YouTube channel. It's often something that is more a part of my inner process as an astrologer, something that fills my time, off screen when I'm reading ancient philosophical texts, comparative theology, philosophy, and religion from the ancient world, thinking about how ancient people from all over the planet considered divination to be possible or how it worked. This is often something that, in other words, fills a lot of my private time and constitutes a lot of my private introspective relationship with astrology. But I've been trying to take some time out on these Sunday episodes to share something of that space with all of you, because I think that there's probably enough of the audience out there who also likes to chew on questions like this that will find this valuable. So that's where I'm coming from today. I want to remind you before we get into this today that we are in the midst of our annual Kickstarter campaign. I don't usually like to plug anything on the weekends, but we do need your help. Our goal is to get to 2,043 backers by New Year's Eve. As of the time I'm recording this, we're between 500 and 600 backers right now. 2043 means we still have about 3/4 of the way to go. So if you're listening to this, you've already donated. A big thank you. If you haven't yet, find the link in the description of this video or at the top of the comment section, pinned to the top. Head over there, throw in a $5 donation, a $10 donation. At the end of today's video, I will tell you about the rewards that are offered when you donate. We have amazing deals on all of our classes, 50% up to 70% off when you bundle our programs together. So I'll tell you more about all that you can pick up through the Kickstarter after today's content is over. And again, thank you so much to everyone for supporting this channel and the production of content that we create here year round. We can't do it without you guys, so big thanks. All right, well, before I get into reading you this reflection that I've written on astrological prediction, how is it even possible that astrology can see what's coming? This is a deep question, right? And a lot of us take it for granted because it simply works. And that's enough. Like, astrology works, so I don't necessarily need to know how it works. It's above my pay grade. Reality's mystical. I'm into mystical things. I accept that these things are possible, even though I don't pretend to understand how. I think a lot of us live in that space, and it's probably best to stay in that space. It's humble, it's curious, it's honest. So by sharing this today, I don't want to drift off into self-righteous certainty about something that I truly just don't know. So let's make that clear, that I find value in this kind of thinking, not necessarily conclusions that we stand on with any kind of absolute certainty. But I've seen astrology work. Let me just tell you a story. I got an email from someone I had done a reading for, and in this reading, we had seen Saturn coming into their 7th house of marriage to conjoin Venus. And what we talked about were themes, topics, and timelines. This is a year and a half prior to Saturn getting to this contact. And we predicted down to about the specific month in which the first contact would occur, and then by retrograde the second, and then direct motion the third. That's a pretty common sequence for a planetary transit. During this time, I said it would be most likely to see the following events, themes, topics around this timeline. Saturn and Venus in the 7th house of love and marriage, hardships, difficulties, hard work, deeper explorations of commitment, of loss, of grief or suffering, but also of deepening commitment and maturation of love. So we outlined the Saturn-Venus dynamic archetypally, and we said this is going to be peaking around this time. Well, so did I make concrete predictions? No, because that's not really my style. I would much rather prepare someone around the pattern that is inherent in a timeline and the possible meanings and outcomes and unfoldings present within it than try to be too specific, unless someone brings to me a very specific context. For example, if 6 months prior to such an event, someone said that their marriage was really on the rocks, And they said, does it look like we may be divorced? We may be divorcing. Feels like we're heading that way. That's a very specific context. If I see Saturn applying to Venus under such a context, I might be more likely to say, well, look, around this Venus-Saturn contact, which will occur in these particular months in the year ahead, these are the likely inflection points where if divorce was going to occur, it likely would, or separation. But these are also inflection moments that could, because I'm not clairvoyant, they could mean the meaningful working out of differences, but probably through contractive, hard, difficult work and honesty. Now, you know better than I do if you think that things could change in that way, if you're open to that possibility, if it feels like a really good potential or not, but I would leave that possibility open for a client while still maybe saying, look, they say, well, what do you think is going to happen? And I will say, look, I don't know, but based on the many contexts I've seen that are similar and the many transits I've seen that are similar, given the context, marriage on rocks, Saturn, Venus transit coming, they often do end in divorce. If someone is like, look, there are just, insurmountable differences and difficulties, what will happen? Well, that's probably where I would, if I'd say, if I'm making a prediction, it sounds like you're heading towards separation or divorce under one of these transits. But I'm only going to say that if I'm really pressed to. And even then, I'll make sure that I say that's just based on what I've seen, given similar contexts, transits, timelines, etc. So most of the time, it's archetypal. So I heard back from this client, and this client shared with me that under the Saturn Venus transit we spoke of, quite surprisingly, her husband died, and relatively young. That would have been one of the least common archetypal scenarios that I've seen of such transits. Although it's a possibility, always, Venus, Saturn in the 7th, or Saturn hitting your Venus in the 7th, could it result in the death of a lover? Yeah, sure. I'd say 1 in 10 times it's that literal, It's like the death card when you pull it in tarot. Very seldomly does it represent literal death. It's usually metaphorical, but it does happen. Now, I'm not kidding you when I say that kind of archetypal specificity, accurate themes, accurate topics around very specific timelines, I have seen astrology perform amazingly well within that kind of setup, and similar to what I just described, although the specific outcomes are not always the most predictable part. The theme, very specific theme, the topic, relationship, love, heartache, that's a Saturn Venus 7th house theme topic. And then the timeline, this specific month. I have seen that kind of specificity at least 10,000 times in my practice, that I've been a part of that kind of meaningful prediction at least 10,000 times. I've seen, upward of 15,000 clients. And so if you are in the world of astrology, let alone if you've had the same number of client experiences or not, I'm not trying to be like bragging or anything. It's just that's my reality as a practitioner. What to speak of the way that I've seen it in my own life, right? And so at times you just pause and you go, like, how is it possible that this is somehow there to be seen or known? I think that becomes at times a meaningful point of reflection for many of us who are exposed to this. So I crafted this kind of written reflection essay today that I want to read to you, that is just my humble thoughts as a practitioner. Now, I reserve the right to change my mind or to be wrong. But anyway, for your consideration, this is something of a Sunday wandering, not a technical talk or a lesson with bullet points, but a kind of meditation on what we're really doing when we practice astrology or divination, and why it works, why it matters, what it teaches us about fate, free will, meaning, and the nature of being human inside a living universe. I want to take my time with this. So let's imagine that we're sitting on a porch together, or taking a walk, or maybe we're in a quiet consultation room with the lights a little dim, and I'm just thinking out loud with you. Let's start from the beginning, from that strange, charged moment when you ask the oracle a question. There's a moment, if you've ever cast a chart, drawn a hexagram, pulled a card, you know this moment where the air in the room almost changes. The question clarifies and your emotional landscape sharpens. Something inside you leans in, and something in the world leans back toward you. There's a sense of presence, a sense of intimacy, sometimes even a sense of being guided by something. The first time this happens, it can feel supernatural. And I think that's where many of us get hooked. Like something external has literally stepped in. But over time, you realize it's not supernatural at all. It's actually very natural. It's just that we're usually moving too fast or thinking too literally to feel this level, this very natural level of reality. Divination is what happens when you suddenly tune into the symbolic nature of the moment. When you realize that the moment is not empty clock time progressing along a linear line, but is a field, a living field of meaning. And the moment, when approached sincerely, becomes expressive. The universe doesn't speak with words, it speaks with pattern, it speaks with symbol. Now, when I say symbol, I don't mean something decorative. I don't mean something invented to stand in for something else. I mean symbol in the ancient sense, something through which meaning reveals itself, something that joins your inner world and the outer world into one unified image. In ancient Greece, a symbolon was a little piece of pottery or stone broken into two, one half held by one person, one half by another. When the two pieces matched, you knew something fit or belonged. And this could be used in many different contexts, but you would recognize each other or something larger that you both belong to. That's what's actually happening in divination. You bring one half of the symbol, your question, your sincerity, your vulnerability, your entanglement in a field of meaning that is already present. The universe brings the other half, which is the pattern of the moment. When the two touch, meaning appears, and it feels personal, it feels intimate, almost like you're being addressed. It's not because there's a little spirit sitting inside your tarot deck or your astrology software, but because the relationship is personal. You're participating in something that includes you. The universe is not indifferent. Reality is not silent. Symbol is the way the cosmos calls and answers. Now, here's something that sounds mystical, but is actually very simple. The moment speaks because the moment is not isolated. We think of time as a line, past, present, future. But the lived reality of time, the time of dreams, synchronicities, intuitions, divination, isn't a line. It's a web. Past events are stored in the emotional body, in the psyche, in the relational field. Future events tug on the imagination, lean into our dreams, shape our questions before we even ask them. When you come to an oracle, in other words, your future is already participating in your present. This doesn't mean the future is fixed, absolutely, but it does mean that the pattern that produces the future is already active right now. And the moment of divination is simply one of those places where that pattern becomes visible. Astrologers had a word for this. The ancient word was apotelismatics, the logic of outcomes. Not outcome as a rigid fate, but outcomes as the natural flowering of a pattern that is present outside of time, inflected in what we see as the flow of time. A seed contains the shape of the plant it will become, but that doesn't mean the plant is predetermined in every detail. It might grow straight or crooked. It might flower early or late. The gardener might prune it or move it to a different spot, but the seed contains the shape of the destiny. Divination is about that shape. It's the shape of what is unfolding. This is why traditional oracles rarely give a straight yes or no. They don't usually spit out exact outcomes. Read the I Ching, for example. It will never tell you exactly what will happen. Instead, oracles speak in images, metaphors, and qualities. They speak in shapes, the shape of a situation, the feel of a direction, the tone of a season in your life. And this is intentional. This is wise. This is how divination also protects freedom. If an oracle told you, here is an exact concrete outcome, it would shut down your ability to meet the moment with awareness. You would collapse into fear or hope or obsession. Instead, oracles speak in ways that require and amplify participation. This is one of the most important truths in the whole history of divination on our planet. Sensitive prediction is not about absolute outcomes. It is about the most likely unfolding given a context. Context is everything. Context is not a footnote. Context is the ground of meaning. The same symbol means entirely different things depending on the situation the querent is in, their history, their emotional state, their intentions, the stakes, their clarity or confusion. A good diviner never interprets a symbol in the abstract. We read it in relationship, which is why I also tell people it's best to have your clients come in with shaped context and reasons for being in the reading. Dry reads give dry responses. A good diviner, again, never interprets a symbol in the abstract. We read it in relationship. And here's why. Prediction isn't about what will happen no matter what. Prediction is about the directionality of a pattern, the current of the moment, the timeline of the situation, its karmic weight, its mythic tone. Prediction is like reading the wind. The wind may shift, but right now it's blowing in a certain direction, and that direction gives you a sense of where things are heading. This is why diviners typically speak about likely outcomes, not absolutes, because patterns hold multiple outcomes within them. And freedom lies not in escaping the pattern, but in how we meet it, how we position ourselves within it, how we respond to the shaping forces of the moment. Freedom in divination is also not the freedom to make anything happen. It's really the freedom to become conscious within the unfolding, regardless of how much control you may have over the outcome. Freedom is the awareness you bring to the pattern you are finding yourself within. This is where the Buddhist perspective becomes incredibly helpful. I've been studying recently a lot of the history of Buddhist philosophy, or you may call it theology, not really, but Buddhist philosophy in relation to the practice of divination. There are many divinatory practices in the history of Buddhism, and I've been seeking out an understanding of how Buddhists think about divination along the path of Buddhist practice. So, Buddhism doesn't imagine the universe as a machine grinding out destiny. It imagines the universe as a field of interdependent arising, a pattern of relationships continually shaping one another. There's no isolated self deciding things from the outside. There's no isolated event happening independently. There's no future waiting over there to impose itself on you. Everything is arising together. Everything is influencing everything else. Everything is relational. From that standpoint, divination is not mysterious at all. Of course, the moment of your question contains information about the outcome. Of course, the chart speaks. Of course, the oracle knows something. It's because you know something, not consciously, but implicitly. And because the situation itself knows something. The pattern knows, the field knows, the moment knows. Divination, in this sense, doesn't look into the future. It looks into the pattern. And the pattern contains the shape of the future. This is why astrology works. This is why the I Ching works. This is why omens work, not because they cause the future or because the future forces them, but because they arise together from the same underlying tapestry of patterns. The Western mind struggles here because it thinks that knowledge has to be linear. If I know something now, I must have deduced it or caused it or perceived it with some special power. But divination is not linear. It's participatory. You're not figuring out the future. You're reading the shape of a story that you are already inside. And stories contain momentum. Stories contain foreshadowing. Stories contain structure. Stories contain arcs that haven't finished playing out yet. This isn't fatalism either. It's bigger than that. It's pattern recognition. And this brings us back to why outcome, while meaningful, isn't really the point. The point is the repositioning of consciousness in relation to the unfolding. When a symbol speaks to you through a chart, a hexagram, a card, it doesn't just describe something out there, it rearranges something inside you. It shifts your awareness and it gives you new eyes. And when your awareness shifts, it is because of a recognition of the pattern of the story that you are within. And therefore, your participation shifts, even if only subtly. When your participation shifts, the pattern responds because the pattern is alive and is not separate from the living matrix of reality. Not always dramatically does the pattern respond, not always in the way the ego wants, but meaningfully if you are patient and listen. The deeper purpose of divination is not prediction, it's orientation. It helps you see where you stand in the landscape of your own life. And when you begin to see divination this way, astrology this way, if you don't like the word divination, the whole practice softens. It becomes less about getting the universe to cough up specific answers and more about listening. Listening in a deeper, more spacious way, listening not just with the mind, but with the heart, the body, the intuition, and whatever part of us senses meaning before language even arrives. And here's something that I've found over and over again in my practice. When people receive a divinatory answer, they almost always know what it means before they consciously know what it means. Something in them recognizes the pattern, even if their mind is still trying to piece it together. There's a resonance, a familiarity, a feeling of, yes, that's it. Or sometimes, oh, no, that's it. But either way, they sense the truth of it. That recognition doesn't come from the diviner's cleverness or from the oracle's authority, but from the fact that the person and the pattern are already in a relationship with one another. Divination is just about making that relationship more visible, bringing our awareness up within it. This is why context, again, matters so much. If you change the context, you change the meaning of the symbol, which is why you are not a birth chart. Your birth chart is a mantic oracular device that will always speak uniquely and differently over the course of an entire life, even though it looks like it's one static image, depending on the context you bring to it. It's like a personalized oracle, but it's not you. It's something you use to identify yourself within the patterns unfolding and your relationship with them. Imagine pulling the Tower card in tarot. If the querent is in denial about a collapsing relationship, the Tower speaks one way. If the querent is in a breakthrough moment of spiritual awakening, the Tower speaks another way. If the querent is about to receive a powerful, not so comfortable medical diagnosis, the Tower speaks yet another way. Same symbol, different stories, different context, different meaning. The symbol isn't a machine with fixed outputs. It's an image that lives inside a relational field. The diviner's role is to help the symbol land in the right place, to help the querent recognize their part in the unfolding story. This is why prediction, when done sensitively, isn't like predicting the weather with a barometer. It's more like sensing the emotional weather of the soul in a story. You're reading currents, like plot lines, tones, directions, textures, and those textures might express themselves in several possible ways that all remain faithful to the larger pattern. So a pattern doesn't determine a single outcome. A pattern frames a field of possible outcomes, and those outcomes share a family resemblance, a coherence, a kind of thematic unity. When I look at a horary chart, for example, most of the time, I don't see a real rigid fate. Sometimes I do. But most of the time, I see a signature, a pattern of energies, you might say. I'm using that word conventionally. A set of conditions leaning towards something. That something may be positive or challenging, clear or ambiguous, fast or slow, but within that pattern is a range. It's not infinite, it's not arbitrary, not anything could happen, some kind of unlimited potentiality, but it's a range that reflects the nature of the question, the nature of the moment, and the nature of the most likely outcome. It's like weather. The sky is dark and the wind is heavy, rain is likely. Could it rain? Yes. Could it pour? Yes. Could it drizzle? Yes. The prediction has to be sensitive because it's relational. It depends on the season, the geography, the humidity, the history of the day, the movement of the clouds, all of it. Astrology works the same way. So does the I Ching. They're not clocks. They're living conversations. Now, what's fascinating to me is that many ancient oracles refuse to give straightforward answers. There are many historical examples of this, in fact, not because they can't, but because they won't. They resist collapsing the symbol into a single definitive outcome, because that collapse would interfere with the querent's ability to participate consciously. It would turn the querent into passive observer rather than active participant. That's not the purpose of divination. The purpose is to awaken awareness, to create spaciousness around the karmic momentum, to allow the querent to see the pattern clearly so they can walk through it with more skill or more grace or more humility or more presence. And again, to me, this is where the Buddhist view of divination really shines. Buddhism doesn't imagine freedom as the ability to make anything happen. It imagines freedom as awareness, as the capacity to see the pattern and not be dragged by it unconsciously. This doesn't necessarily mean to change an outcome. And when you receive a divinatory answer from this standpoint, you're not being given your fate, you're being given your opportunity, an opportunity to engage with the moment with lucidity, with clarity, with Buddha mind, instead of confusion, instead of grasping. In that sense, divination is not fortune telling. Its esoteric value is as a liberation practice. When you know the nature of a pattern, you stop fighting the wrong battles. You stop trying to force things that can't be forced. You stop resisting the season that you're in. You stop misunderstanding the lessons that you're encountering. Instead of wrestling a pattern that you're ensconced in, you begin to dance with it. This is something I try to teach in astrology as well. We don't use the chart to dominate our fate, to manipulate energies to get certain outcomes. We use the chart to understand the nature of the moment so that we can meet it wisely. A well-interpreted chart, in my opinion, or a hexagram or an omen doesn't hand you a verdict, it hands you a perspective. And perspective changes everything because perspective is a spiritual event. Perspective is grace and perspective is freedom. Not an exercise of the will to manipulate outcomes. That's a false sense of freedom that all ancient spiritual, mystical, philosophical traditions talk about and warn against. When you see the larger pattern, your personal drama shrinks, not in importance, but in rigidity. You stop clinging to outcomes as proof that you're okay or safe or successful, and you begin to sense that your life is part of a larger, coherent unfolding. It's not random, it's not chaotic, it's not meaningless, but deeply patterned and deeply relational. And this is why we could also functionally say that divination heals, not because it promises a good outcome, but because it reveals meaning. Meaning inside uncertainty heals. Meaning inside difficulty heals. Meaning inside joy heals. Meaning inside the trajectory of a simple day in the life heals. Meaning is what the soul thirsts for. Meaning is what helps us endure, is what opens the heart. And meaning never appears as a set of facts for the most part, but as symbol. When you cast the I Ching and receive hexagram 55 or 36, you're not just getting info, you're receiving an image that resonates with your moment. That resonance is where meaning enters, not through intellect, but through recognition. Recognition is the soul's yes to the pattern it is held within. There's no wrong pattern to be held within from this perspective, and therefore no wrong outcome to be held in from this perspective. And paradoxically, when we learn to recognize and say this yes, events start to flow in the direction of virtue, love, compassion, release, forgiveness, what we might broadly call good fortune. Now let's return again to the idea of prediction, because people often misunderstand this part of divination. They either think prediction is impossible or they think prediction is absolute. But prediction, real prediction, is neither of those. That was a little greeting from Thor. Real prediction is neither of those. Prediction is invitational, not declarative. It's sensitive, not rigid. It honors the nature of the pattern, the context of the question, and the freedom of the moment. Think about someone, for example, sitting with someone who is telling you about their life. After a while, you can often sense where the story is going. Not because you're psychic, but because we are patterned beings. And if you're around here enough and you hear enough stories and you observe enough lives, you become familiar with the patterns. And our stories reveal our direction. Our choices reveal our tendencies. Our emotional landscape hints at what's ripening. Divination does this at the symbolic level. It reveals the directionality of the moment, the leaning of the pattern. But the outcome remains open enough for consciousness to matter. If the outcome were sealed, divination would be meaningless. If the outcome were completely open, divination would be impossible. The beauty is in the middle, the relational middle, where pattern leans and soul responds, where fate and freedom meet and shake hands, where the symbol speaks but doesn't coerce, where the oracle guides but doesn't dominate. And this middle place, this relational space, is where all of life is actually unfolding. Most of us think we live at the extremes. Either everything is fate, everything is freedom, but the truth is much more tender in my experience, much more nuanced and alive. We live in the middle where our lives are shaped by patterns, by karma, by history, by character, by timing. And yet within those patterns, there is always room for awareness. And that is our freedom. There is room for grace. There's room for new movement. There's room for the soul to turn even slightly toward clarity. And that is freedom. A small turn in a pattern can make a big difference. And this is why divination doesn't demand certainty. It doesn't give commands. It gives shapes. It gives images. It gives gestures. It gives hints. It gives metaphors that open the mind and heart in ways direct language rarely can. A symbol, in this sense, isn't a fact about you. It's a doorway into a different kind of awareness or relationship with yourself or with the situation or with another person. And once you walk through that doorway, you see differently, you participate differently, you become a little bit more conscious of your place in a story. And that consciousness, even if it doesn't change the outcome, changes you. It changes how you meet the outcome, how you walk through it. And in that sense, it's really changing everything. This is also why oracles often appear ambiguous to beginners. The ambiguity in a symbol isn't a flaw to be figured out, it's a feature. Ambiguity preserves openness to find ourselves and situate ourselves within a pattern. Ambiguity invites reflection instead of passivity, and ambiguity allows the querent to inhabit the answer, not just receive it intellectually. This is why I often joke that the worst thing you can do after having a dream is run to a dream interpretation book. That doesn't allow you to find yourself participating in the symbol. It strips it of its life. It's like taking a dream animal and stuffing it like taxidermy with meanings and interpretations. If divination were mechanical, again, it would give mechanical answers, but it's relational, it's alive. So the answers it gives are alive. They're evocative. You don't pin symbols down like butterflies in a collection. You let them fly around inside you. You let them rearrange your perceptions. You let them show you something you hadn't yet seen. This is why it's important not to think to yourself, I am my birth chart and I know exactly what that means. I'm figuring out what my birth chart means. Don't figure yourself out. Be in an ongoing, deepening relationship with yourself. We wouldn't say that about a lover. I figured this lover out, because we know that intimacy continues and continues. And that's what draws us into relationship. Why should it be any different with ourselves or with reality itself? This brings us back to free will, because one of the subtle mistakes the Western mind makes is imagining freedom as something exercised at the level of action. But freedom in the history of divination isn't about what you choose later or now. It's about how aware you are now. In this sense, freedom isn't choosing the outcome, it's meeting a moment. Freedom isn't being present, is being present enough to let the symbol land. It's the willingness to be teachable. Think about it like this. If you're in a dark room and someone hands you a candle, your freedom doesn't lie in forcing the room to be different than it is. Your freedom lies in the fact that now you can see. And once you can see, you move differently. I mean, who would think about taking a candle and forcing the room to not be dark with that candle? No, the real freedom is in using the candle to see clearly. Divination hands us a candle. It hands us an awareness. Astrology hands us candles. They don't tell us to use this to change something. They use it to help us illuminate and see something. When the room is illuminated, you suddenly understand where the doors are, where the obstacles are, where the path curves. When you keep bumping into the same old table that's there because you couldn't see it. This is freedom. Not in the egoic sense of I get to choose everything, but in the spiritual sense of I can see more and I have more awareness. Awareness is the only true freedom we ever have, according to many ancient traditions. And it's more than enough, in my opinion. Awareness transforms experience, even if it doesn't transform circumstance. Awareness is, therefore, a kind of grace. Awareness is the shift that makes the whole journey feel purposeful instead of random. It opens the heart to the symbolic quality of life. In that sense, everything speaks, everything teaches, everything participates. So when we predict, we trace the shape of an outcome. We're not stealing fate from the gods. We're simply listening to the melody the moment is already playing. And even that melody allows improvisation. Even that melody allows nuance. It invites presence. Now, outcomes matter. They're not irrelevant, but they're not ultimate. The ultimate thing is your relationship to the moment, because that will continue. And according to these ancient traditions, it will continue infinitely. Your openness to the symbol, your willingness to be shaped by insight, your ability to participate. This is the important thing. Divination is the art of opening that intimacy. Astrology, the art of recognizing the pattern. In life, that's what's speaking through all of it. Well, anyway, thanks for spending this time with me, and I hope that this gives you something to sit with, something that opens a little window inside. All right. That is it for today. I hope that you found this reflection enjoyable. Again, one of the things that I'm doing right now is I'm preparing to write. I just finished one book. I'm preparing to write another, and I've been using my Sky Speak Sunday episodes as a way to sort of stretch out creatively into the topical domains of my new book. So a lot of this is sort of serving as like the first creative turns of my, it's like the turning wheels of my creative process with a new book, which is meant to be about what astrology is, how it works, sort of the philosophy of astrology that I feel it's not missing. It's not something we talk about as much as I think we should, because it keeps us in aligned relationship with our practice, to remind ourselves of what it's here for, what it's doing, at least according to these ancient spiritual sages that gave this to us and first practiced it. So anyway, that's it for today. After I sign off right now, you can donate to the Kickstarter and choose a reward. I'm going to tell you about what rewards are available. If you like this content, for example, this morning, it took me about 2 hours to write that. And then, right now, 37 minutes. So we're almost at 3 hours of production just for this episode. I do this as a sadhana, as a spiritual practice, year round, 7 days a week. We have guests on Saturdays now for bonus episodes, but the other 6 days is me prepping and doing this, rain or shine. So if you value it, please consider supporting the channel. I deeply appreciate it, and hope that you'll find some good rewards to pick in exchange for your patronage. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye. Hey, everyone. Thanks for sticking around. I'm going to tell you about the different rewards that are available when you donate and support this year's Kickstarter. Remember, our goal is to get to 2,043 backers by New Year's Eve, and your contribution makes a huge difference. But when you do contribute, there are a variety of really cool gifts that we offer only once a year through the Kickstarter campaign. So I'm going to take you over to the Kickstarter and tell you about what those are. You can also find more information about almost all of the rewards on our website, nightlightastrology.com. Any of the programs that you might want to take, all of the details about those programs, their start dates, are all located on the website, in case that's a question. But at the top, you'll notice on the right-hand side, when you're scrolling down on the Kickstarter, you're going to see the different rewards that are available at different pledge levels. The basic pledge level is the Astrology of 2026 calendar. This is a really nice PDF calendar that we make that gives you a feel for what transits I'm going to be covering on the channel as the year goes on. It's also really nice to know what the transits of the year are day by day. So if that appeals to you, it's the most basic level of pledge, and you can get that. Scrolling down, you can also bundle any of these. So if you want multiple rewards, you can bundle them upon checkout. You'll see how that works when you're in there pledging. Scroll down a little bit. There's a new talk that I've made. This is a brief talk on the value of silence and having a silent or meditative practice in your life, how you might get one started. And again, just what I see as the value of that for astrologers. Scroll down a little bit more, you'll see the Astrology of 2026 audio and video. This is an exclusive lecture where I break down all of the major transits and astrological signatures for the year ahead. I'm not releasing this anywhere else, so if you want my insights for the entirety of 2026, this is a great reward to pick up. Scroll down a little bit more and you'll see that I have a guided meditation that I've created for your year ahead. This is more about spiritually, psychologically, emotionally focusing yourself for the year ahead. It's a special kind of guided meditation and visualization that I've created. So if that sounds appealing, you could pick that up. It's called The Oracle Within, a Guided Meditation. Scroll down a little bit more and you'll see that my new book, which I plan on starting at the latest by the summer of 2026, you can get in on that chapter by chapter first draft release in audio and text form, just like The Oracle Speaks, my first book that I just finished. This is a new book that I'm starting in 2026. So if you wanted to hop in on the early release for that, you could do that there. Scroll down a little bit more, and the description of that book and what it's all about is right there for you to check out. Year ahead horoscope readings. If you want to receive about 6 hours worth of content going through horoscopes for 2026 for all 12 rising signs, this is a great offering that's going to give you, again, about 6 hours worth of horoscopes for all 12 signs for the year ahead. I'm not releasing anywhere else, so check that out. Then you'll notice as you scroll down a variety of different archived masterclasses from previous years. There's one on the lunar nodes in ancient astrology. That's about 10 hours worth of content. The magic and mystery of the fixed stars, again, about 10 hours of content. Zen and the art of zodiacal releasing, and the alchemy of the outer planets. These are all lengthy masterclasses that I taught in previous years, about 10 hours of content per package. So a really great deal on some advanced content there. If you are brand spanking new to astrology, check out Astrology for Complete Beginners. This is a course that we have. It's about 10 to 12 hours worth of content that's meant for people who are brand new to astrology. This is like astrology level 0. So, but if that's you or someone you know who might benefit from just like a basic introduction to astrology, check out that audio video course. You get a website where it takes you through everything. You can watch it at your own pace and time. It's all recorded. The next offering is Ask 3 Horary Questions. You purchase this one and you get the ability to write to me anytime throughout 2026, 3 separate occasions to ask 3 separate horary questions, and I respond to those via email. That's a really great service that saves you significantly off the course of horaries because you're bundling 3 together. So a really nice gift to use for yourself. Ask a couple of questions to me through horary form throughout the year. Scroll down and you'll see that I have only 30 of these. These are year ahead mini readings, very exclusive because I don't give readings anymore. I have students and staff taking clients through a special reading service. So my readings are very limited to classroom spaces, but I have 30 of these exclusive mini readings where I give you my take on your biggest transit for the year ahead in your birth chart. Those are personally recorded and sent to you. Then you'll see the 2025 Masterclass bundle, the 2024, and the 2023. These are, like upwards of 30 hours of content that are going to give you really deep exploration of a variety of topics. So those masterclass bundles are taking multiple series from previous years and bundling them together in one package. And you can see all the topics listed there, the 2025 bundle, the 2024 bundle, or the 2023 bundle. A really great way to package together a lot of intermediate to advanced level content that I've taught in the past. Then if you go down, the new 2026 masterclass series that I'm teaching is on the decans. So if you're interested in learning more about the decans and the upcoming 2026 masterclass, check this out. It's on sale right now through the Kickstarter. Won't be this cheap again. So a really good way to save on joining that program in 2026. If you have any questions about that program, you can find more information on the website through the page that's dedicated to the masterclass. Scroll down and you'll see we also have a new Nightlight Guild membership. This is ideal for people who are already enrolled in Nightlight or in the kind of Nightlight pipeline as students and are looking for more practice, more study at an intermediate to advanced level. We're meeting twice a month and doing live client readings, live horary workshops, a lot of practice with advanced concepts and techniques. So this is ideal for people who are really looking to continue developing within the Nightlight sphere. And so students in Nightlight, check this out, come study with us. This also includes every monthly webinar that I teach on the year, plus twice monthly meetings that are 2 hours each for advanced practice. So really nice to have a guild membership. This is something I've been wanting to develop for a while. Check that out. Scroll down, you'll see both of my wife's herbal apprenticeships, year 1 and year 2. If you like Ashley and her work, her YouTube channel, we own the same LLC. So we just thought we'd throw in her herbal apprenticeships at a discounted rate if you want to join those. And then really our most popular item are the class passes. So you'll see at the very bottom, you can attend 1 Nightlight course, 2 in a bundle, 3 in a bundle, or 4 in a bundle. And what that allows you to do at a really significantly discounted rate, this is our best sale of the year. We only do it through the Kickstarter. In those class passes, you can bundle and take year 1, year 2, year 3 in Hellenistic natal astrology. You can take the horary class, or you can take any yearly master class. And those class passes are going to allow you to then bundle together our programs and go through as many as you want. You could bundle 2 of them together, 3 or 4, or just 1. And it's going to be the best sale that we have on our courses for the year. So those are the different rewards we offer. If you have any questions about any of them, feel free to email us, info@nightlightastrology.com. We deeply appreciate your support, and I hope that in exchange for donating and supporting this free content year round, that you will also find a valuable reward in one of these offerings. Remember that your donation supports a staff of people, myself, my family, the free production of all of this content year round. We deeply, deeply appreciate your contribution. All right. Hope you're having a great day. See you later. Bye.